In tonight's stories, 6 nightmares claw through the walls of the ordinary. A woman thinks her ex is stalking her, but finds a man hiding behind her bathroom mirror. A father remembers the night a stranger stood silently in his kitchen. A dead friend sends letters from beyond. A mall traps an explorer in a maze of living mannequins. A hitchhiker takes away a man's anxiety, but leaves him dying. And a legend of a killer who hunts killers bleeds out of the internet and into real life. 6 tales of obsession, intrusion, and horrors that never stay where they belong. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. 1. I thought my ex was stalking me, but it was something behind my bathroom mirror. Nobody believed what I'm about to tell you until it was nearly too late. Even now, as I'm typing this, I don't think I'm safe. What happened to me could happen to anyone, and you'll understand once you know the whole story. Everything started when I moved into that apartment. It wasn't much, but it had seen better days, that's for sure. Aged paint, carpet stains of unknown origin, and the occasional centipede darting across the kitchen floor were just some of the issues with the place. The landlord said it was primarily quiet, and he wasn't wrong. The neighbors kept to themselves, except Mordecai and 2B. He could stretch nice weather we're having into a 30-minute conversation. But it was home nonetheless for Piper and me. She's my best friend. Half shepherd, all shadow, the only other heartbeat in my life. After grad school, every day was a test to see if I was able to stretch what little was left of my savings. We moved in with nothing but a mattress, a dying coffee maker, and a box of miscellaneous stuff from my days in college. It was a fresh start, and the only distraction I had was hunting for employment. I stayed inside and chewed pen caps, all the while telling myself that I was saving money, living on canned soup and rejection emails. But as boring as this was, it was safer this way. After my last boyfriend, well, let's just say I've had enough of men for a while. He used to send me messages. Not the kind that would make your heart flutter, but the kind that made it stop. I try not to think too much about it these days. For the first week, everything felt almost normal. I was just slowly starting to piece together my post-graduation life, until the notes started appearing. At first, I thought I'd written them and forgotten. A sticky note on my pillow, curled at the edge, like it had been there a while. Don't cry like that. It doesn't sound like you. Try again. Another, tucked into my sock drawer. Tonight, wear the blue shirt, the one that makes you softer. Then came the Polaroids. Photos of me brushing my teeth, cooking breakfast, sleeping. Each one was perfectly framed, time-stamped, and impossibly candid. The grain was heavy, the colors sickly and yellowed. They smelled faintly of mold and old chemicals like they'd been developed in some damp basement darkroom. When I held one, Piper growled, a sound I'd never heard from her before. Low and long, until it faded into a whimper. She pawed at the photo like it carried something foul. Still, I tried to ignore it, told myself someone was playing a sick joke. Until the notes got more personal. You look beautiful when you cry. Stop wearing your hair up. I like it down. You're getting better at saying the lines. The lines? What lines? I started to wonder if it was my ex after all. He knew how much I loved that blue shirt, the way I cried when I was truly overwhelmed. The kind of crying you didn't want anyone to know about. He used to always accuse me of putting on a show when I displayed my emotions like I used to. That note on the pillow, it felt like something he would say. I checked the restraining order again that night. It was still active, yet useless. I was so weirded out by these events that I brought everything to the landlord. I told him someone had been inside my apartment. He asked if I had locked the door. When I said yes, he shrugged as if I was wasting his time. You're probably just nervous being in a new place. The brain can be fickle and make things up when under a lot of stress. When I went to the police, somehow they were even worse. They suggested that it was all a prank, a neighbor with a bad sense of humor, or a secret admirer. Even when I mentioned my ex, even when I begged them to investigate it, they said there wasn't enough evidence to pursue such action. Their advice? If you feel unsafe, maybe move to a different part of town. I couldn't. I had no choice but to go home. I thought about calling my sister. Or even my friend Jade. We fell out of touch last year, but she would pick up if I called. What would I say though? Hey, someone's leaving me notes that sound like my ex, and sending me Polaroids of myself sleeping. Can I crash on your couch? I had already leaned too hard on people during grad school. With no money left to my name to break my lease, this was my burden to carry. Besides, what if I brought him with me? I told myself I'd be more careful. The next morning, I found a note stuck to the bathroom mirror. Snitches don't make good wives. They knew, but how? How did they know I had gone to the police? After that, I noticed something strange about the mirror. Sometimes, even hours after my shower, it would be foggy, like someone had leaned in close and breathed on it. Worse was the odor that would creep out from the walls. It was a cloying, acrid tang that carried through the air, like burnt plastic and vinegar. Then came the sounds when I would lay in bed at night. Click! It wasn't the building. It wasn't my phone. It was the unmistakable sound of a camera shutter. Piper heard it too. She stiffened at the foot of the bed, hackles raised. Her growl rumbled in her chest until it gave way to a nervous whimper. She whined at the bathroom door, indicating something was wrong. I quickly got out of bed, turned on the lights, and followed the noise. I pressed my ear to the bathroom mirror. Click! And then, silence. Days later, a hairline crack appeared in the lower left corner of the bathroom mirror. It wasn't a clean break. It was as if something behind it were trying to push through. I pressed my phone's flashlight against it and saw not insulation or drywall, but a hollow void. Black, empty space beyond the glass. Shortly after this, that's when I began receiving the gifts. A charm bracelet I lost in middle school. A pack of discontinued gum I used to love. And then, most disturbingly, a snow globe that I was sure had burned in my grandmother's house fire many years ago. These weren't just keepsakes. They were memories. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching me. They knew me. I started recording voice memos to try and wrap my head around things. I talked to myself and journaled the day's events, and for a while, it helped. Until one day, I played one back and heard a 2-minute clip I didn't remember recording, soft breathing at first. Then, sighs and coughs gave way to sobs. A man's voice, gentle and coaxing. No, not like that. You say, I'm scared like this. Then, my own voice trembling, broken. I'm scared. The man's voice returned in a harsh whisper. I just want you to love me back. I felt sick to my stomach at the revelation that there was now a voice to the weird occurrences inside my apartment. Piper whimpered and hid under the couch, refusing to come out for hours. I slept with a hammer beside my bed that night. It all came to a head sometime around 1 a.m. I was sitting in the dark, hugging my knees, my heart racing as I listened to the clicking of the radiator. Then a long grating drag, like metal being pulled across stone. Something was rasping along the drywall in the bathroom, slow, deliberate tap. I grabbed the hammer by my bed and crept to the bathroom silently. Piper scratched at the door as I shut it behind me. Good girl, I whispered through the crack underneath. I stood in front of the mirror. Silence. The noises had stopped completely. I breathed a sigh of relief, but as I went to leave, a pale finger slid forward through the crack in the glass. I gasped in horror as I watched it twitch and retreat. Weeks of paranoia snapped as I brought the hammer down again and again. The mirror exploded, glass raining down onto the tile. Behind it was a crawl space that was narrow, musty, and smelled of rotted earth. And crouched inside, he was there. His pale skin shone with a wet sheen, slick with sweat like he'd been marinating in the dark. His knees were drawn up, camera dangling loosely around his neck. Dozens of photos covered the walls behind him, photos of me. His cracked lips curled into a disgusting smile as he said with delight, "You broke the stage. You weren't supposed to break the stage." Then, mimicking my voice, "Don't you see, this was our favorite part." "You've been here this whole time?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. He nodded slowly with wide, fearless eyes. "It's cozy in here, and you're so easy to watch." I raised the hammer with trembling hands, doing my best to look intimidating. "You need to leave." "Why would I leave? You're my favorite thing." He spoke with sinister infatuation. I stumbled into the tunnel and swung blindly. He grabbed my wrist, his cold fingers wrapping around my skin like wire. I kicked the man repeatedly and managed to free myself, allowing me to wriggle around the crawl space. The flash of his camera lit the tunnel, and for a second, I saw all of it. The Polaroids pinned to the walls like trophies. The wires, the vents, peering into every room. I crawled faster. The grimy, stale moisture of the air tasted faintly of copper beneath my tongue. "Say it. Say you need me," he hissed as he reached for my foot. "No!" I spat back as I continued through the crawl space, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. "Wrong!" His voice broke in anger. "That's not your line." I turned a corner, and then another. The tunnel forked. Left or right, I didn't know. I darted forward towards the left tunnel, my chest burning as I tried to keep my breath shallow. He skittered in the darkness behind me, his laugh echoing in the tunnel. The laugh didn't sound human, it sounded rehearsed. And then, another burst of light from his camera. The flash forced my eyes to squeeze shut. My grip loosened on the hammer, and it fell from my grasp with a metallic clang. I was disoriented, lost, unsure where I was. When I regained my senses, I realized I had reached a dead end. He emerged slowly, camera up, that awful smile returning. "There you are," he breathed, and the stench hit me, like old batteries and bile. As he continued towards me, I desperately lunged for the hammer that was still within reach. He tried to stop me, but I brought it down with all my strength. It connected with a sickening crunch against his collarbone. He screamed in agony and stumbled back. I quickly crawled past him and turned a corner, slamming my shoulder into the wall as I pivoted through the darkness. After frantically traversing the dark with scraped elbows and hands for what seemed like an eternity, I finally emerged out of the wall and found myself back in my bathroom. Piper barked wildly as I grabbed my phone and began dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I clutched the phone as it rang, and Piper and I fled to a neighbor's apartment. The police arrived not too long afterwards to investigate the scene. With their weapons drawn, they found the hole and the contents inside. A makeshift bedroll, boxes of instant noodles, and hundreds of Polaroids were just some of the items found. But they didn't find him. They said they would continue to search and that he couldn't have gone far. But I knew better. He had never been far. He had always been just inches away. I moved 3 weeks later. With the help of my friends and family, I was able to afford a new apartment. It took everything in me to ask. I thought I'd burn those bridges, but they answered without hesitation. The new apartment was bright and sterile, with no stains on the floor or hairline cracks in the mirror, only smooth surfaces and quiet hallways. The faint smell of white paint and new carpet made it feel like the kind of place where nothing bad had ever happened. It felt like a reset button, like maybe here, I could finally breathe for a change. Piper curled at my feet again, and I told myself that I was finally safe. But last night, Piper growled. 2. The night a man was standing in our kitchen. This isn't my story. It's my dad's. He told me about it years ago, and I've never forgotten it. He said it happened a few years before I was born. He and my mom had just gotten married and were living together for the first time. The house was out in the countryside, far from any neighbors. It felt private, but also lonely. It had a lot of glass windows, and my dad always said that mattered later. One night, my dad woke up thirsty. My mom was still asleep, so he got up quietly and walked down the hallway to the kitchen. He didn't want to wake her. When he turned the corner into the kitchen, he saw a man standing there, dressed in black, completely still, right in the middle of the room. My dad froze. He told me he couldn't even think, just stared for a second before the fear took over. Then he screamed as loud as he could. The man ran out the door. Without thinking, my dad ran after him into the tall grass outside, shouting for him to stop. He says the grass was wet and cold, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was getting the man away from the house. Then he heard a gunshot. My dad says the sound ripped through the night. The man had a gun and fired into the air. That was when my dad realized how serious this was. He stopped chasing and ran back inside. By the time he got back, my mom was awake, crying and asking what had happened. My dad tried to explain, but his voice was gone from screaming. My mom called the police. A patrol car arrived shortly after, and because my dad could barely speak, my mom had to tell the officer everything. The officer said they'd keep a car watching the house for a while. For the next few nights, my dad barely slept. The patrol car showed up sometimes, but most of the time, the officer on duty was asleep. My dad couldn't relax. He stayed up himself, sitting in the middle of the living room with a baseball bat, watching the glass walls, convinced the man could be out there, watching him. He said he felt like every shadow was someone standing there, waiting. Even during the day, my dad says he felt on edge. Every creak of the floor, every movement outside made him jump. He didn't feel safe until they moved. But even then, he says he never stopped thinking about the man and the way he could have just come back any night. My dad says those days were the scariest of his life. Not the gunshot, not even the man standing in the kitchen, but knowing someone had been inside their home, close enough to reach them, without any reason, and then just leaving. He told me he can still remember the feeling of being watched, the way the glass windows reflected the dark outside, and the helplessness of knowing there was nothing he could do to stop it. The man never came back, and the police never found him, but my dad says he'll never forget those nights, and neither will my mom. They moved on, but the memory stayed with them, like a shadow over the first part of their life together. 3. I received a letter from my best friend, but she's been dead for 2 years. I still write to her. It started as therapy, or at least that's what my counselor said. Put the words somewhere safe, she told me. So I wrote Mira letters, folded them, sealed them, tucked them in a shoebox under my bed. Dear Mira, I miss you. Dear Mira, you'd laugh at how badly I burned dinner again. Dear Mira, I wish you hadn't. I never expected a reply. But tonight, when I pulled open the mailbox, there it was, a white envelope with my name scrawled across it in Mira's loopy handwriting. Same curve on the A, same smear of ink where she pressed too hard. The world went thin around me. I carried it upstairs like a bomb. I stared at the flap for an hour, convincing myself it was some cruel prank. Then I tore it open. Hey, you, I keep thinking about the blue mug with the chip on the rim. Do you still have it? You used to hide my notes in there, remember? Don't be afraid to laugh at the stupid things. I'm somewhere that lets me hear it. Tell me the small stuff. M, I dropped the letter. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Nobody else knew about the mug. I threw it out the week after she died because looking at it hurt too much. I should have stopped then, should have burned it. Instead, I wrote back. My handwriting was jagged, frantic. If this is you, prove it. Tell me something only we know. The reply came 3 days later. You left the light on again. There's a number scratched under the kitchen sink. It's not yours. Remember the attic door? Open it. Don't bring the mug. Don't write back unless you mean it. M, I didn't remember any number under the sink. But when I crouched down with a flashlight, there it was, carved deep into the wood, hidden behind the drain pipe. 0928. Her birthday. I told myself I dreamed it. That grief does strange things. But tonight, another envelope slid through the slot. No stamp, no return address, just my name. The paper smells faintly of her shampoo. I haven't opened it yet. It's sitting on the table, whispering. 4. I got trapped in a dead mall in South Florida. and I do not think it ever let me go. This is not something I have told many people. I know how it sounds. I know most people will not believe it, but it happened to me, and it changed the way I look at every empty building I pass. This is the story of how I became trapped in a mall that should not exist. Part 1. Inside the Dead Mall. South Florida is covered in failed projects and abandoned buildings. Hurricanes destroy some, bad money destroys others. There are motels left to rot, entire neighborhoods stripped bare, plazas boarded up forever. But this mall near Fort Lauderdale was different. It had been closed since the late 1990s. Explorers online called it a time capsule. Neon signs still hanging, mannequins frozen in the windows, food court trays stacked as though waiting for customers who would never return. One Friday night, I decided to go inside. My friends backed out at the last second, so it was just me. I had my flashlight, my phone, and a small backpack. I slipped in through a service door just before midnight. The air hit me like a wall, damp, heavy, and thick with the smell of mildew. The flashlight beam caught escalators rusted into place, plastic plants crumbling to dust, and storefronts hidden behind filthy glass. I saw a Radio Shack sign, a toy store with faded boxes in, and the window, a Sam Goody with cracked posters from the 90s. When I reached the food court, I checked my phone. My clock read 3:12 in the morning. I had only been inside half an hour. Somehow hours were gone. I turned back for the door, but the corridor stretched far too long. Longer than when I had entered. Stores I had never seen before lined the way. Mannequins stood in cracked clothing. Their plastic skins split open. From inside the splits, something wet dripped to the floor. Dark trails of slime pooled around their feet. Then the dripping grew louder. Not from the mannequins, not from the fountains, but from every direction at once. And then I saw movement. Something crawled out of an old department store. Its arms were too long, dragging itself forward, joints bending wrong. My light caught its head for a moment, and I froze. A mannequin head, but split straight down the middle. Painted eyes black, the mouth hole jagged and open. It tilted its head in the beam of my light. Then it dragged itself forward, nails scraping the tile. I ran. Every corner twisted back into the same places. I passed the movie theater 3 times, and each time the posters outside had changed. First films I recognized, then titles that never existed, then warped images of faces smeared across the glass. I passed an Orange Julius again and again, each time with a different smell leaking out. Burnt sugar, sulfur, the stench of rotten meat. The dripping became footsteps, wet, heavy, slapping the tile behind me. When I looked back, I saw another mannequin crawling after me. Its chest had split wide open, and inside I saw organs. Not fake, real. Blackened lungs wheezing, a stomach bloated and twitching, and a heart covered in mold pounding hard enough to shake the ribcage. I reached an exit sign, glowing red. I bolted through the door. 5. The silent hitchhiker I pick up every week takes all my anxiety away. I just found out where he's been putting it. My world is small. It's composed of the 4 walls of my tiny, rented apartment, the soul-crushing beige cubicle where I work, and the worn-out vinyl seats of my late father's car. The car is the only thing he ever gave me that felt like a gift instead of a burden. It's a heavy, old boat of a thing, a relic from an era I never knew, and most nights, it's my sanctuary. You see, I have this pressure, a constant, low-frequency hum of dread that lives behind my eyes. It's a cocktail of financial anxiety, social awkwardness, and the crushing, existential weight of a life that feels like it's being lived on a treadmill, set to a slow, grinding pace. Some nights, the pressure gets so bad I feel like my skull is going to crack. So I drive down a long, lonely stretch of state highway that cuts through the darkness between towns. It's a road to nowhere, really. Just 2 lanes of cracked asphalt, flanked by endless silent fields and the occasional skeletal tree. It's out there, in the deep, velvet black of the night, that I do something I know is stupid. I pick up hitchhikers. I know the risks. I've seen the news reports, heard the horror stories. But the truth is, I'm lonely, and the quiet, contained intimacy of sharing a small space with a stranger for a few miles, it helps. It's a brief, fleeting connection in a life that has none. A way to feel like I'm not the only person awake in the world. The first few were normal. A young soldier on a weekend leave, his uniform crisp, his stories of basic training both boring and fascinating. A college kid with a beat-up guitar case, heading home for the holidays. They'd talk, I'd listen, and for a little while, the pressure in my head would ease, replaced by their stories. Then, one night, I picked him up. He was just standing on the shoulder of the road, a tall, thin silhouette against the faint glow of the moon. He wasn't thumbing a ride. He was just standing there, waiting. I pulled over, my gut telling me to keep going, but my loneliness and boredom won out. He opened the back door and slid in without a word. He was off. His clothes were simple, dark trousers, a button-down shirt, but they were cut in a style that was vaguely out of date, like something from a photograph from 30 or 40 years ago. He was unnaturally still, his hands resting on his knees, his posture rigid. He didn't speak, he just stared straight ahead and, with one long pale finger, pointed down the road. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "Sure thing," I mumbled, and pulled back onto the highway. We drove in total, unnerving silence. The usual classic rock station on my old AM radio seemed to have faded to pure, hissing static the moment he got in. The silence in the car was so absolute it felt heavy, like a physical weight pressing in on me. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He never moved. He didn't even seem to be breathing. Miles crawled by. The knot of anxiety in my stomach, the pressure behind my eyes. It was a screaming, frantic thing now. The enclosed space of the car felt like a coffin. I was about to pull over, to tell him to get out, when he slowly, deliberately, lifted his hand and tapped twice on the passenger side window. We were in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no houses, no crossroads, just the empty road and the dark fields. I pulled over. He got out as silently as he had gotten in, closed the door with a soft click, and stood on the shoulder of the road as I sped away. I didn't look back. And then, it happened. It was like a switch was flipped. A dam inside me broke. An incredible, inexplicable wave of pure, blissful relief washed over me. The crushing pressure in my head didn't just ease, it vanished. Completely. The knot of glass in my stomach dissolved into warm, liquid peace. The static on the radio suddenly cleared, and a song I loved came on, sounding crisper and more vibrant than I had ever heard it. The air in the car, which had felt stale and suffocating, now tasted clean and sweet. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The first, truly deep breath I felt I had taken in years. The dread of my job, the fear of the bills, the constant, grinding anxiety, it was all gone. I was light. I was happy. I spent the rest of the night driving with the windows down, singing along to the radio, feeling a joy so profound it was almost a religious experience. The feeling lasted for 2 glorious days. I was a different person. I was confident at work. I made jokes with my coworkers. I slept a deep, dreamless, perfect sleep. But by the 3rd day, the pressure started to seep back in, a slow, creeping tide of the old dread. I knew what I had to do. I had to find him again. That night, I drove back out to that lonely stretch of road. I drove for an hour, a desperate hope, warring with the fear that it had just been a fluke, a bizarre, one-time psychological event. And then I saw him, standing on the shoulder in the exact same spot, as still and silent as a statue. My heart leaped. I pulled over. He got in. The same unnerving silence. The same empty miles. The same 2 taps on the window. And the same glorious, euphoric, soul-cleansing release the moment he was gone. It became my therapy, my addiction. Once a week, every Tuesday night, I would make my pilgrimage. I would drive out to the road, and he would always be there. I would pour all of my accumulated stress, anxiety, and sadness into the silence, and he would take it. He would carry it away into the darkness, leaving me clean, light, and free. My life transformed. With the anxiety gone, I was able to function. I got a small promotion at work. I started talking to people, making tentative friendships. For the first time, I felt like I was actually living, not just surviving, all for the price of a few gallons of gas and a silent weekly ride with a ghost. But after a few months, the effect started to diminish. The high wasn't as high. The relief wasn't as absolute. The feeling of peace would only last a day, then half a day. The passenger was still taking something, but it felt like he was only taking the top layer, leaving the deeper, older anxieties untouched. I needed more. I needed a stronger dose. And if he only fed on my negative emotions, I realized, with a chilling addict's logic, that I would have to give him more to eat. I started to cultivate my own misery. I began to farm my own dread. I started small. I deliberately miss a bill payment, just so I could spend a few days with the cold dread of a late fee notice hanging over my head. I'd take on extra, impossible deadlines at work, knowing I would have to work myself to the bone just to feel that raw, frantic stress. And it worked. The more miserable I was during the week, the more powerful the release was on Tuesday night. The high was back, better than ever, so I pushed it further. I started picking fights with my boss over trivial things, reveling in the hot, angry surge of adrenaline and the subsequent days of walking on eggshells. I started borrowing money I didn't need, just to feel the crushing weight of the debt. I was a self-destructive artist, and my medium was my own life. I was tearing it apart, piece by piece, just to have a stronger negative emotion to feed the silent man in my car so I could feel a few hours of peace. It was a vicious, insane cycle, and I was completely, hopelessly trapped within it. The accident happened 3 weeks ago. It wasn't even his fault, not directly. It was mine. I was driving home from a deliberately terrible day at work, a day where I had accidentally deleted a crucial file, incurring the full, screaming wrath of my supervisor. I was buzzing with a potent cocktail of shame and anxiety, already looking forward to my ride the next night. I was distracted. I ran a red light. It wasn't a bad crash. The other driver was fine. My old car was crumpled, but fixable. My only injury was a clean break in my left tibia, a broken leg. At the hospital, as I was lying in the ER, a doctor came in with my x-rays. He put them up on the light box. "Well, the good news is, it's a simple fracture," he said, pointing with a pen. 6 to 8 weeks in a cast, and you should be good as new." He paused, his brow furrowed. He tapped a spot on the x-ray, a little higher up on my tibia, away from the break. "But what is this?" I looked. There, on the image of my bone, was a strange, dark, spiderweb-like growth. It was a shadow on the film, a patch of darkness that didn't belong. "It looks like some kind of a lesion," the doctor said, his voice now a low, clinical murmur. "A tumor, maybe. We need to run some more tests." The next week was a blur of scans, needles, and quiet, worried conversations in hospital hallways that I wasn't supposed to hear. Finally, the doctor sat me down in a small, sterile office. He had a file in his hands and a look on his face that I knew was not good news. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The growths, they're not just in your leg. They've spread. They're in your lungs, your liver, your spine. It's a very, very aggressive form of cancer. And the strangest part is, we can find no record of it in your previous medical files. It's as if these tumors, already at a late stage, have appeared out of thin air in just the last few weeks." I just stared at him, my mind a roar of white noise. He kept talking, using words like prognosis and palliative care and making arrangements. But I wasn't listening. I was thinking about my silent passenger. I was thinking about the weekly ritual. I was thinking about all that pain, all that anxiety, all that dread I had fed him. It hadn't just vanished. It had to go somewhere. Did he? Converted them somehow? He had taken my mental anguish and transformed it, giving it back to me in a new, physical, and utterly malignant form. The tumors were my anxiety. They were my dread. They were the physical manifestation of all the poison I had willingly cultivated and then handed over. The doctor's final words cut through the haze. There are some treatment options we can try, but to be frank, I've never seen anything progress this quickly. I can't predict what will happen, but I could. I knew what would happen. The doctor had said it was too late. There was no cure for this, and in that moment of absolute soul-crushing certainty, a strange, quiet calm settled over me. I'm dying. That is a fact. And with that fact comes a whole new world of fear. The fear of pain, the fear of the unknown, the fear of leaving nothing behind. It's a vast, crushing, ultimate anxiety. The strongest dose I've ever had, and I know exactly what to do with it. I checked myself out of the hospital this morning. My leg is in a cast, but I can drive. My old battered car is waiting for me. And tonight is Tuesday. I'm writing this as my final goodbye, and as a warning, be careful what you wish for. Be careful of the easy solutions, the silent helpers who offer to take your burdens away. It's better to carry your own pain. It's better to face your own dread. Because the things that offer to take it from you are not your friends. They're just looking for a new place to put it. I'm not afraid anymore. That's the strange part. My decision is made. The doctor said my time is short, so why should I spend it in terror? Why not spend it in that clean, pure, blissful peace, even if it's just for a day or two? It's time to go now. My car is waiting. The lonely road is calling. And I know, with an absolute certainty, that he'll be out there, standing on the shoulder, waiting for me. And I have one last, beautiful, terrible gift to give him. One final ride. 6. The true story of Killer. The Killer. Do not read at night. You probably don't want to read this. It's not on the news. It's not on Wiki. If it was, it would get deleted right away. 'Cause this is real, not fake. They call him Killer, the Killer. He was born in a hospital, but the lights were always messed up, always flickering. The nurses looked dead, tired, and his mom screamed when she saw him, 'cause his eyes were already black. Not normal black, like pure black, like endless pits. He never fit in school. Kids made fun of him, called him freak. One kid shoved him in a locker. That kid never came back the next day. Nobody asked questions. They didn't want to know. When he was 14, he figured it out. The world is full of killers, serial killers, masked psychos, creepypasta wannabes. He hated them. So he swore, if you kill, then I kill. There's only one killer in this world, me. That night, Killer the Killer was born. His skin is pale white, 'cause he burned his face with bleach and fire. His hoodie is stained with blood from all the killers he's taken out. And his teeth look sharp 'cause he filed them down. His hair is black and messy and covers one eye. His eyes never blink, just stay black, leaking a little blood sometimes. He carries knives all over him, taped to his arms, his chest, his legs. When he walks, you can hear the metal scrape against itself. But he doesn't kill normal PPL. No, he only kills other killers. Jeff the Killer, gone. Eyeless Jack, skinned. Laughing Jack, laughed to death. Slender Man, chopped like a tree. No one survives. Some PPL say he can smell killing. Like, if you ever killed even a bug, he'll find you. Others say he only comes at 3:33 a.m., 'cause that's when the devil is asleep and can't stop him. Last night, I heard scratching at my window. I looked and saw him. pale face, bloody hoodie, knife grin. And then I remembered. I killed a spider last week. He's coming for me next. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well if you can.